All right, so second last session of the day. I am so impressed to see how full this room still is. I thought it would be definitely half empty by this point, but well done to all of you, and what an exciting session we have coming up. So we'll be talking with UBank and 86400 around partnering for growth. In late January 2021, UBank and 86400 announced their intention to combine to accelerate growth and innovation in banking. The move, which will see 86400 join the NAB Group, is part of a more rapid growth trajectory for UBank and 86400 and is intended to deliver a scaled digital bank to help more Australians take control of their money. In this session, UBank CEO Philippa Watson and 86400 CEO Rob Bell will talk about what the merger is intended to do for customers, how they anticipate it'll change the focus and the direction of their organisations, how they intend to bring their organisations together, and what it means for the Australian community, Fintech community, that is, more generally, and the Australian community. Our moderator for this session is Shahirah Gardner, co-founder of Finch, a financial data intelligence company, providing advanced AI-driven transaction intelligence solutions for Fintech and enterprise clients. I'd like to welcome the panel.
Thank you. Welcome, everyone. It's fantastic to see a fuller room at this time of day. Home stretch, drinks are just around the corner, so hold on tight. My name's Shahirah, and it's my absolute pleasure to be moderating this fireside chat with Philippa Watson, CEO of UBank, and Robert Bell, CEO of 86400 and their recent acquisition. I'm actually just going to kick off straight to you and allow yourselves a few minutes to introduce yourselves, tell us a little bit more about your roles, and then we can dive straight into the nitty-gritty.
Great. Thanks, Shahirah, and thanks for coming this afternoon. Rob and I were standing at the outside, and we went into the wrong room, and there was about 6 chairs, and we felt very sorry for ourselves that we're going to be talking to 6 empty chairs. It's great. And also at the back here, there were more people coming in for the session than leaving, which is also a good thing. Philippa Watson, I've been with the NAB Group for almost 12 months, and in that whole time have been leading the UBank business. Prior to that, I spent 15 years at CommBank, mainly in the consumer space, but doing a bunch of different roles across there. And my new colleague, Rob.
Thanks, Philippa. So Rob Bell, we conceived, built, licensed, grew, and actually yesterday we closed the transaction in terms of selling 86400 to the NAB Group. And as much fun as it's been the last 3.5 years, really looking forward to the next 3.5 years to see what we can do together.
Fantastic. Well, firstly, congratulations. A bold move by UBank to accelerate growth and innovation, and an astounding outcome for 86400, Cuscal shareholders, and most importantly, the first acquisition of its kind, and hopefully an indicator of the type of collaboration we can expect to see between fintechs, banks, and financial services. And that's certainly been a recurring theme and quite positive and encouraging. And for those who've been here, particularly over the last 2 days and yesterday especially, a very candid approach to how we can work better together. So really excited to be diving into the details. Philippa, perhaps I can start with just having you talk through the merger itself, how it came about, what sorts of problems or challenges was UBank looking to solve, and what did this merger address for you?
Yeah, thanks, Shahirah. This has been pretty, I think, well covered in various media commentary in recent times. But I guess to step back, when I joined UBank just under 12 months ago, I spent a couple of months looking at the customer proposition and particularly the technology environment. And UBank's about 12 years old, so when UBank was created, we were all wandering around with Blackberries. It was an entirely different time, right? So the UBank technology environment is built around the idea of a phone-based bank rather than a digital bank. And the technology environment that we're on it's all 12 years old. And we're on a very different technology environment to the rest of NAB. So where we've had, all the investment to upgrade NAB, we haven't done the same job in UBank, which means that now the challenge for us was, did we spend 3 years building from scratch a new technology environment that would support our aspirations, or did we find a way to go faster and to find a partner who was on the same journey as us around wanting to really help Australians take control of their money? And We looked at a range of different options, as you would imagine. You know, you always look at half a dozen different options, but for us, the potential for the 86400 UBank partnership stood out very, very early on. And, you know, we've done a lot of, and Rob will talk to this as well, a lot of the work that we did in working out whether or not we were going to bring this partnership together was around the technology environment, the compatibility of our vision for what we wanted to deliver for customers. But then also the really important piece was to make sure that the 86400 team in particular felt like this was going to be a great, you know, number of years for them. Rob will talk about the capability that he has in his team. We think he has built an extraordinary team. And so for us, there's a lot of commentary about this being a technology solution. It's actually as much about providing a platform for Rob and his team to be able to accelerate what they were developing as for just solving for our technology challenges in UBank. I don't know, Rob, if you have an advance on that?
Yeah, sure. I mean, look, we have built a digital bank from scratch. It's the latest technology. It's very robust and it's very scalable. I've said many times in these forums that no one in 86400 had an ambition of building a small niche bank. We wanted to help Australians take control of their money. It's not much point doing that if it's only a small amount of helping. So we felt that this was a way to really accelerate our proposition to many more people. And so that's the way we've thought about it. The full team is moving across. When we first announced the transaction, you know, there was the normal sort of people saying, that's it, you know, innovation's going to stop at 86400. We've updated our app every week since January. We've introduced new features. We introduced a new aggregator group last week. We've got a really cool new feature being launched in a couple of weeks' time. We actually haven't slowed down our delivery at all, and nor should we, because that's what actually NAB wanted. And I think it's a really mature approach that NAB have taken here, saying, you know, we've got the balance sheet, we've got a really good customer base with UBank, we've got really good deposit base, really good mortgage base. Still, business is still growing, UBank is still growing, but it's a very mature approach to say, actually, we want to leapfrog that, and we want to give our customers the best technology and best experience. And that's what led to this transaction.
Rob's answered like my next 5 questions. So I'd like to kind of maybe then address, you know, it certainly feels like you're setting the bar quite high for banking generally across the board. How do you feel this is going to increase competition, going back to some of the observations and responses around the acquisition? How does this increase competition across banking versus decrease for some of those concerned?
Look, it's a good question. Successful as 86400 has been in a very, very short period of time. We're only hitting about 100,000 customers at the moment. We've just tipped over 500 million in terms of lending, which is really good in a really short period of time, but it's a tiny, tiny, tiny fraction of the market. So you would say right now, we certainly haven't turned the dial on competition, right? We need to reach more people to change competition. And so this enables us to scale that way. And I think if you look at it and you step back and you go, will other major banks have to respond to the sort of things we're doing? Yes, absolutely. You know, we've seen a number of our features already be copied by one of the largest banks in Australia. Certainly trying very hard to copy the features that we're delivering. So it will force other banks to also look at what they're doing in terms of their digital and mobile proposition.
What are some of those features?
Great example would be connected accounts. So we've had connected accounts now since day one. So we allow customers to connect all their bank accounts and see all their accounts in the 86400 app. We've been doing that, 2 years before open banking even came along. If we hadn't been doing that and hadn't been agitated for that, you would probably see open banking still being an imagination that other banks are trying to push down and kick down the road. So that's a good example. We use technology, and we use that then to predict bills. So we actually have really smart algorithms that look at all your transactions across all your banks, not just 86400, and we actually predict your upcoming bills. And the fact that we can do that, and we can actually give people insights into what's happening in the future. I mean, banking has always been about this history, right? If you think about it, you used to get a statement, and then you get your statement online now, but it's all about the past. And if you think about what banks should be doing, they should be using the data to help you with your future, because once it's happened, it's too late. So our predicting bills in the future is a great example of where we're using data and technology to actually, really help people take control of that money.
You're speaking my language. So at Finch, we're focusing on transaction data intelligence. And for those of you who are in the first panel session this morning with Bud, talking about the rise of transaction data as a really accurate source of real-time customer profiling and risk profiling. To do bill detection sounds really easy and sounds like something that everyone just expects out of their banking app, but actually to do that requires a lot of data, volumes of data, and really smart algorithms from which to be able to detect the frequency, the amount, etc., with meaningful accuracy for the end customer.
Yeah, and the trick is to actually, it's easy to present lots of data, but it's actually to find meaningful data and present it in an easy to understand way. And so the one we chose, first of all, is just saying to you what your bill is, what bill is going to come out next week and next month, and which bank it's going to come from and how much. And then the next step was just to tell you whether that's different from the last time you paid that bill. And so it's just really simple insights. And we should stop telling people how to run their lives and give them the tools to help them do it themselves. The Bell family had subscriptions to Netflix, Foxtel, Finch, we had gym memberships that we weren't using, and so you can just sort of start to see how it's so easy in a digital world to end up paying for a bunch of stuff you don't use. And so this sort of insight actually helps you take control of your money.
And it's really that middle step between presenting the data and then automating those experiences and helping take away that sort of admin work, so to speak. I'd like to talk about from a practical standpoint, what this merger means for UBank customers and 86400 customers.
Yeah, that's a great question, and there's a really simple answer. So I hope I deliver it as simply as I can. So UBank has about 600,000 customers who sit on our environment, and the intention and the path that Rob and I have to run hard at is to prepare the 86400 platform and business model to be able to accept as many of those customers who will come across as possible. And so that's what, now that we're actually able to talk to each other with the competition protocols now having fallen away with the transaction being complete, Rob and I are working furiously from now on getting his environment ready for the customers of UBank to move across. What that means is that in time to come, and as soon as possible, but it will take a little while, is that we'll be providing the opportunity for UBank customers to move across onto a new bank, which we will launch together, and so that they will be able to experience the kinds of things that Rob's just talked about. So we certainly have an absolute intention to make the new bank modelled off what Rob has built and created. So connected accounts, all of those things we're going to be making available to UBank customers over time. So would you have any advance on that, Rob?
Yeah, I mean, that's the absolute intention, is that 86400 has been built to scale to bring those customers across in a way that's helpful and easy for them. But the most important thing is not just that acquisition. It's NAB's desire here is to actually build a leading digital bank, and so putting together 86400 and UBank is just the first step. We want to then continue to add features, continue to add delivery of benefits, and kind of expand that marketplace. So that's what's going to change competition. Is people are going to have to respond to that.
Yeah, and just on that, the other thing I'd say is that what you can expect to see is continued innovation, because, I don't wake up in the morning and think about changing, telco providers, right? It's not something that most people have on their mind, that they want to go through, opening new bank accounts, and so the task that Rob and I and our teams have is to make a proposition that is so compelling that it causes people who don't really mind where they bank to realise that there's something really special here. So, and that comes back to the competition point. People will only come and come with you if you've got something that's worthwhile for them.
Absolutely. I think you've painted a really nice picture of how the products and features and customer experiences come together. I'd like to talk about bringing the organisations together. So we're talking about combining a fintech, a bank, organisational culture, ways of working, pace, vision. Where do you see, how is that coming together for you, and what's the ultimate combined vision?
Yeah, the quick version on that is that we're right at the beginning. Up until, I know that you guys heard about this transaction or potential transaction back in January, but we've been caught up in really strict competition protocols until yesterday, where there's been a very narrow amount of information that we can actually share with one another. So from today, that's the start of our teams actually starting to work together in an unrestricted way. UBank and 86400 have the benefit of both being Sydney-based. Our offices are about 70 metres away from one another. We've got teams that have lots in common in terms of their skill sets and their backgrounds. But the organisations are quite different as well. We've got a 12-year-old bank and a much newer bank. And so the piece that Rob and I have to make sure is that we're, being really taking the best of both organisations and bringing across the skills and talent and expertise from UBank that's necessary, but also making sure that we continue to empower the team that Rob has built.
I'd like to talk about open banking now. So what sort of changes do you think we can expect to see from traditional banks first? And how can banks better leverage fintechs to meet those expectations, the customer expectations?
I've learnt many years ago not to speculate on what other banks will do, so I won't. But I think, look, open banking is one of those ones that we've been incredibly supportive of since day one. We were one of the original testers in the group. I think hats off to Rob and Rob Hale, who really probably led it really from the mutual sector, to be honest. But we were there from day one, agitating and trying to get it done. I think it is a fundamental change to the marketplace. It creates great opportunities, but it is also the most overhyped piece of change that's happening right now, because I can tell you now that everyone is not suddenly going to share their data tomorrow just because of open banking. The real challenge is to create use cases that actually help customers, and it does have a bit of maturity to go before those use cases will become really helpful. One where we're using data already is for loan applications. So when you do an 86400 home loan, you don't give us any paperwork. There is no paperwork. I mean, the dumbest thing that banks do is to ask you to tell you, what you spend on education and eating and groceries and things, because you don't know. Like, no one actually knows. We use the data to actually tell people what they're actually spending. We take their data, we categorise it, and we actually tell them. And so we actually are doing responsible lending more accurate than anyone else. So that's a great use case for data. We don't use open banking yet. We will use open banking for that when the universe is wide enough to capture everyone. So there are many of those use cases, but simply just kind of collecting things and playing them back to customers is not enough. You actually have to have some, use that data and add value. And I think the really important thing, what we've learned with our connected accounts, is you have to make it really, really, really easy to not share that data. So for us in our app, at any point in time, if you don't want to share your data anymore, there's a little rubbish bin. You push the rubbish bin button and it's gone. Your data, your connected accounts is gone. And that's going to be really important in building the trust up with open banking.
And Philippa, what are some ways that banks can better leverage fintech collaborations, and maybe provide some insight as to why they don't, or why they're hesitant?
Yeah, I think, I don't know, I'm probably the least qualified person in this room to talk about whether or not that's changing. It feels to me, having been both in NAB and also in another bank, that the banks are throwing their minds open to the idea that there's incredible skills and talent and answers outside our walls. What I think is, every bank's doing it slightly differently. I think here, speaking for NAB and talking about this partnership, I think what you've seen here is NAB understanding that when you build within a big bank environment, you're going to go slowly because the risk environment means that you need to measure every single decision very, very carefully. And I think that what's allowing, when I think about what Rob's team has built, had we decided to build the same thing, there would have been, 100 different points at which we'd have to figure out if that was within risk appetite, etc. Whereas today we can look at 86400 as a totality, see the way it functions, see the way it's been built, and it's easy to get comfort with seeing the whole rather than trying to get comfort with every little bit and wondering what it's going to add up to. I think there's different models. I don't know, just to throw the question back to you, do you feel like the banks are sort of maturing their ways of working with fintech, or do you feel it's still one-sided? Or you tell me.
You know what? I love seeing these unbundling of banks diagrams on LinkedIn, where you're able to kind of pinpoint all the fintech players and the different, where they sit kind of across the value chain. And I think it's a matter of time. I think. Forums like this is really important for partners on both sides to share what the experience has been in collaborating. I really loved yesterday's session with Visa and Regional Bank, and they were quite transparent with that experience. It was hard work. It was a grind for the Visa team, but they did a fantastic job and they delivered. But I think having more of those conversations where we're very clear with what fintech does really well and what their strengths are, and playing to those and recognising, where the banks can help with the scale and resource and growth. So, a partnership of that nature.
My tip on it is that if you're a very small startup or early stage fintech and you're expecting to do business with a very large bank, you're probably dreaming, because you're going to spend more money on compliance and proving all this stuff than you have in the first instance. I think a good tip is to actually work with sort of smaller like-mind banks or like-mind fintechs. I mean, 86400 is built, I think last count we had over 40 different partners who helped us build 86400, and all of those are going forward with us in terms of this acquisition. So whether it be Data Action, who's in the front there with Nicola, or Loanworks, who we built the mortgage product with them, for example. They are partners that have grown with us and will now grow exponentially as a result of this transaction. So I think finding people that work at your pace and your speed is probably my best tip.
I think also just one other thing. One of the things that was really distinctively obvious with the team that Rob's built is that he's got great technologists and great bankers, and bankers who are technologists and technologists who are bankers, and that was important to us, that we could look into there and see banking expertise, and that gave us a great deal of comfort. So that was important to us.
Wonderful. I could go on forever, but I'm going to leave precisely 3 minutes for Q&A. Questions from the audience? Got a mic coming.
Thanks. Well, firstly, congratulations on the transaction. Is the intention that you'll continue to operate as two separate brands? And also, is the intention to continue to innovate around a direct-to-customer proposition? Or will you consider sort of white labelling or plugging other partners in?
I'll go first on brand. For a period, we'll have two distinctive brands in market, UBank and 86400, but definitely the intention, and you will see this, it's not just an intention, is to bring the brands together. And what we've said publicly is that the intention is to have the UBank name or the UBank word, but then also to move to the 86400 brand elements, because brand is very much, particularly nowadays, more than just about a name or a word. So you're going to see a new bank that looks and feels a lot like 86400. There was a second part to that question as well, which I've... No, oh, no, there was a second question.
Yeah, so around a direct, are you still going to be very much direct to customer?
864 already has a direct-to-consumer model, but we also already work through mortgage brokers. So we have a mortgage broker model. That's the main way we actually source mortgages at the moment, and that's been really strong for us. And what we've done there is we've actually solved the technology pain points of a mortgage broker. So it's a digital mortgage, but delivered through a mortgage broker, which is where something like 60% of all mortgages come through at the moment. Sorry? Savings side, we're only direct.
Hi. Quick question, Tonya Berglund from Yodlee. So you can imagine what my question's going to be. So more focused on risk appetite, understand you want to leverage the technology. Philippa, when it comes to 86400's risk appetite for lending, are you going to leverage that, or do you feel that you're somewhat held back a bit by the NAB relationship and the conservative nature of that risk relationship there?
Yeah, so that's a really good question. Look, I think the NAB risk appetite around lending is the same as the 86400 appetite, in that we want to make good loans to people who can afford those loans, and it's going to advance their financial interests and not put them in strife. So I think the appetite is the same. I think probably you're asking about the sort of the technology that 86400 uses with income and expense verification. Through the due diligence process, we got really comfortable with the way that 86400 has sort of architected its product offering, its credit assessment, etc. So we're comfortable with the way things are happening at the moment.
Yodlee, another great partner. Thank you.
Great. Well, I think we'll have to wrap things up there. Thank you all very much for your time. Please help me put your hands together for Rob and Philippa.
Thanks.